Hello, today is March 28th. We are at the Perryville Library and we are going to do an oral history interview. And could you please state your name for the record?
Yes, Narcy Zionkowski.
And could you just spell your last name, please?
Yes, Zionkowski.
And do you give your permission for the Friends of the Aberdeen B&O train station to use this interview?
Yes.
Can you tell me when and where you were born?
I was born in Nanticoke, Pennsylvania in 1936.
And were you educated out there? Did you move to Maryland?
No, I was educated out there. I went through the schools and graduated in 1954 and joined the Navy shortly thereafter.
How long were you in the Navy?
6 years.
Okay. And then when did you come back?
I came back in 56 and I was stationed in Bainbridge for 4 years. And then when I got discharged in 1960, I started work in Elkton at the General Cable plant. And I worked there 11 years as a traffic manager. And I had an employee that was a railroad worker who was laid off and got a job at General Cable, and he worked for me. So after a few years, he was called back to the railroad when, I guess, business started picking back up. I think there was a coal strike somewhere, and that cut a lot of the employees out. So he went back to work there because more money. I guess a year or two after he left, he called me up one day and said that the railroad was hiring. Would I be interested in coming to work there? And of course, more money. So I said, yeah, and I went down and had an interview.
Where?
At Aberdeen.
Oh, okay.
And then I was sent to Baltimore for a physical.
And this is for was it still the Baltimore in Ohio, or is it now the
Yeah, it was
C&O?
still the B&O.
Okay.
Yeah. So the supervisor at Aberdeen interviewed me, and then I guess he was going to hire me, so he sent me to Baltimore for a physical. And then I took the physical and went to work on the railroad in May of 72.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so as a B&O employee, was the C&O already involved with the B&O at that point?
No, not at that point. It came later, but I don't remember when they merged with the C&O.
What was your job? What was the title?
Mine?
Mm-hmm.
I was just a maintenance away employee, worked on the track. And the work was all handwork. We had no machinery at that point whatsoever. And everything was done with a pick and a shovel, and everything that was lifted manually. If we had a piece of rail to put in, we had rail dogs, and there would be like either 6 or 8 of us carrying this from one point to another.
Did you have a zone where so did you go to the Aberdeen station, park there, and then get on like a work car? How did you get?
We had a truck.
Okay.
we had we drove to the station, and then we got in the truck when we started our work. The layout of the station at that point was we had a door facing the road that was like a dressing room or meeting room place for us. The supervisor was upstairs. His door faced the parking lot. And then we had a tool shed opposite the supervisor's door where we kept all our hand tools and everything. And upstairs, the supervisor had a closet up there where they kept stuff that they didn't want stolen.
What was his name? You can go back to that.
I never thought about thinking about his name.
So did you use the big freight room area? Was there for equipment on the away from the road? Did you use that big room?
Yeah, we kept like drills in there for cutting the rail to put the bolts in. We had different heavy machines that we kept in there. Stuff that could be stolen was kept upstairs in the supervisor's locked area.
So was the building heated, the whole building, or
Yes.
just the upstairs? Or?
Yes, we had a boiler in the basement. I think it was an oil furnace that was down there. And of course, all the pipes were enclosed in the asbestos back then.
I can imagine.
Yeah. But we had like a small bathroom down there where we met in the mornings. And of course, only the foremen were allowed upstairs with the supervisor to get the the work schedule for the day. I was in a 5-man crew, a foreman and 4 men. So the 5 of us took up the truck. It was like a truck with 4 doors.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there was a seat in the back. And it was a stake body truck. We had a 12-foot bed on the back of the cab. Yeah.
Did the truck go on the tracks, or did you have to drive on the road?
On the road.
Okay.
Yeah. The supervisor had a truck that rode on the rails. He had like a pickup truck. It was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you have was there a certain number of miles that you tended to?
Yeah. The gang I was in reported to Aberdeen, and we covered from Newark, the border of Delaware, to Edgewood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. From Edgewood to White Marsh, there was a foreman and 1 man. And he had an office in White Marsh, right along the side of it. And what they did was, and then we had another that supervisor's name was Herb Gallion.
Okay.
Yeah. And then after Herb retired, George Gray was the supervisor.
Okay.
They had another foreman in the East Yard of Baltimore, but I don't know if, I don't remember when they came on board. They belonged to the Baltimore terminal, and then we were given that yard on the east side, which is right at the very beginning of Baltimore, just a little bit into the city, past the how do I want to say that? The split there that goes 40 and whatever Monument Street was that or something. It was
Okay.
yeah.
So
But we had that one yard there, and it stretched out to. It was a long yard. It stretched out about 2 miles to North Point Road.
okay. So what year did you retire?
99.
So that was CSX. Then did CSX take over at some point during that time period?
What is that?
CSX. When did they come in?
Probably the early 90s
Okay.
or maybe the late 80s.
Mhm.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you enjoy the work that you did?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It was hard work. Actually, my first 3 days when I came home, I collapsed on the kitchen floor and told my wife, I think I made a mistake giving up that desk job.
I can understand that. So did your work change a lot over the years?
Oh yeah. The big change was when we got a backhoe. That took a lot of the heavy work away from us because the backhoe could carry the rails, it could carry the railroad ties, it could dig in the railroad ties instead of us doing it manually. Oh, that machine was a godsend there, yeah.
Was it because was it cyclical maintenance that you were doing, or was it because there was an issue?
No, it was both. There were things that would happen overnight that needed to be fixed, like broken bars on the jointed rail. They would break when the train would go over it, and mud was always a big issue. We had areas where there was mud, and it would cause the rail to droop, and then we'd have to go in there and raise it up and tamp stone underneath of it and so forth to level it out. But there were issues like if a train reported something, the supervisor would go down there and look at it or check it out, see if it was needed to be repaired immediately or whether it could be done during regular working hours, and then he would assign us things to do down there.
So did you get called out in emergencies?
Not from the beginning. When you don't have any seniority, you're last on the list to get called. So usually the older fellows were called out during the night if need be, until I became a foreman, and then of course I would get the call. And then I'd get my men together and go down there and fix it at night. When it started to snow, you better be ready to go, because the phone would ring almost instantly when the first snowflake fell. And back then, we had no federal work rules, I guess you'd say, because we were not, sometimes we would work 28, 30 hours straight. There was no, like 12-hour limit like there is now or whatever. But when it started to snow, you stayed there at your station. We had those smudge pots that went under the switches. rock wool that was in a cylinder, not a cylinder, but a metal box. And there was a lid where you'd put the kerosene or diesel oil in, and rock wool was the wick. And those would slide under the switches to keep them warm when it would snow or have ice or whatever. So we'd have one person at each one of these, because when the train goes by, it blows them out. So you then relight.
So there would be, all through a snowstorm, there would be somebody at each one of these switches?
Oh yeah,
wow. Okay.
yeah. In the early days, we had little huts. I remember working at that Jackson Station Road up here. There was a switch up there where there's two double tracks up there, which still is. And there was a little shanty there, so to speak. You had a little potbelly stove in there, and you stayed in there when it was snowing.
Okay.
And then when the train went by, you went out and relit the pots that were blown out, because when they're going down, 50 miles an hour, they're blowing snow. So they're not only putting things out, but they're dampening everything with the drifting snow that goes right across there. So
how many, in your sector, how many of these switches would there be?
Oh, let's see, we had 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think we had 11 men working at Aberdeen.
Okay.
So, and the foreman that had the trucks, they would do more than one switch, because they could drive.
Go back between
Yeah.
station places.
Now, when I started, I'd worked up at Jackson Station. They would drop me off, and I would stay there until they came and picked me back up when it was time to go home. Yeah.
So did they plow the tracks? Like if there was a heavy snowstorm, was there also a plow that went on the tracks?
Yeah. They had one in, I guess it was in Baltimore or Philadephia, that would do that. Yeah, if it was really a heavy snow. But I don't recall anything I don't remember any of those trains going by me with the plow on them when I was working here. Now, I remember when I worked in Wilmington, I saw one of those plows in the yard up there. So we must have had a pretty good storm. That would have been in the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything that was very memorable that you remember? Any very dangerous accidents or incidents?
Oh, yeah. I was still a rookie. I probably was only working on the railroad a few months, and we were replacing ties on the Susquehanna Bridge. And the bridge people would put the ties in, but we were responsible for putting the rail back and then nailing it down. And what we did was, there was one person on one side of the rail and another person on the other side, and we would drive the spikes. It was like in tandem, he would hit and then I would hit. He would hit and then I would hit. Well, being a rookie, I was just getting good at doing this, just starting to get good at it, because it takes time to be able to hit that little thing that's this big around on that spike. And I was too slow and he was coming down and he caught my hammer.
Oh.
And it knocked me off balance and I was going over the bridge
Oh my.
and he caught me. He was my foreman and he and I were working together and he caught me before I went into the water.
Did that happen? Did you remember anybody falling off the bridge in your time?
Yeah. Yeah, one of the carpenters fell off the bridge.
Did he live?
No,
Oh.
no. But that was after I was working in Delaware, because I was working in Baltimore as a foreman, and a foreman's job came open in Wilmington, and I bid on that and got that because it was closer. I mean, I had a railroad truck, but I still had to drive over an hour to get down there.
Right.
And going up to Wilmington was like 40 minutes, from where I live. So I took that job closer to home, and that's around the time that I think that guy went off the bridge. Yeah.
Was the bridge work the worst of your assignments?
That was probably the most dangerous, working on that bridge. Yeah. And you had to be careful where you walked, because there was a catwalk there, but you're not working on the catwalk, you're working on the actual rails.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, and at that time, they didn't have a guardrail there or harnesses.
Nothing.
The harnesses came later where you had to tie yourself off.
Right.
But back when I started, no, it was nothing like that.
Oh, wow. So looking back at your career, what did you enjoy the most?
I think the fellowship, everybody, it seemed like when I first went there, it was like we were a big family, Nobody took you as, an outsider or this and that. It was, and I'll never forget, my wife passed us on Route 40, and she said there were 5 people in the truck and only one white man, and that was you sitting in the middle. It was mostly colored people working on the railroad when I first started working down there. I think there was one other white person, and of course the supervisor. Everybody else was black.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I never really thought about that.
Yeah, but it wasn't like I was an outsider. They helped me. My supervisor, I mean my foreman especially, he taught me so much, about how to do things the easy way instead of the hard way. Because when you first start working, you're doing everything the hard way. And then, yeah.
So, when you retired, what was your position when you retired?
I was still a foreman.
Foreman.
Yeah. I was offered a supervisor's job several times, but I didn't want to take a cut in pay because supervisor is a salary job.
No overtime.
No overtime. And they're out there when you're out there, so they're not getting paid, for working overtime. So, no, I said no, I didn't want to take a foreman's job and take a cut in pay.
So do you have any other stories or memories that you want to talk about? Well, you can think about that. Is there anything about the Aberdeen community while you were working there? Did you go into town, frequent any shops, go for lunch anywhere, or were you not? You were not. You just stopped there or got your equipment and then went off.
Yeah, there was no. Well, we had a 30-minute lunch period, but everybody brought their lunch because, I mean, there was no place to go and get back in 30 minutes
Right.
when you're working on the track. Sometimes, like say we were in the yard working, like maybe unloading ties off of a car onto the stockpile. Somebody would run out and get something if we were close to a store or something, but mainly everybody brought their lunch.
You were out in the middle of nowhere most of the time.
Yeah.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
So, anything? So, when you worked at Aberdeen, how many tracks were there at the time?
One.
But there was. So it was down to the one.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we had a small yard in there where, of course, our equipment came in and our materials. We'd get a carload of railroad ties, and at that point we would have to get we had a crane that was on a flat car that was assigned to the supervisor. So if that car had to be unloaded, they would make arrangements for the work train to bring that crane from wherever it was working into the yard, and he would take the ties off with a bucket, and set them on the ground.
So there was a siding near the station then?
Yeah.
The track went over. Okay.
Yeah.
Were there any other buildings on that site? Was there any other sheds
No.
or anything? No, it was all
No,
one?
it was just a storage yard.
Okay.
Yeah, we kept, rail there, extra plates, angle bars, stuff like that, heavy stuff that was stored outside on platforms.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do they heat the switches now? How does that work?
They're electric.
So there's like an electric heater underneath the switches?
Yeah, and all they do now is they throw a switch when it starts.
Manually, or is it like an automatic one? Does does a person actually have to go and manually?
No,
It's all automatic?
and it's done either in Baltimore or Philadelphia.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's lined up to all the switches go on at the same time when they throw the.
Wow, that's most interesting.
Well, there was a little process in there because when the smudge pots were done away with, they went into propane.
Mm-hmm.
They would put a propane tank by the switch and then run propane onto the gas burners underneath. But somebody had to, throw the switch at each spot, and then they finally were able to get enough technology to do it all electric.
That's amazing. Anything else you'd like to talk about? Any other important memory? Or it sounds like you enjoyed your time on the railroad.
Yes, I did. I retired early. I didn't put 30 years in, I put 28 years in.
Okay.
And I retired early because of the travel. I was working in Philadelphia at the time, and I had probably been working in Philadelphia for 18 or 20 months prior to retiring.
In what year?
99.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was like you had to leave at 5:30 in the morning to make it up there for 7.
Right.
And then when you left at 3:30, you got home maybe 6 o'clock with the traffic. because it was always so bad.
Right, right.
And if we had to work overtime, that made it even worse.
Mhm.
Your commute time was even longer because everybody was going home at 5 o'clock.
Okay. Anything else you want to talk about?
I don't know. But, you know, the automation really surprised me, you know. Things that would take 4 or 5 men to do or a gang of men to do are being done by a handful of people, you know. All the spiking that was done manually, they have a gun that just shoots it down there, you know.
Okay.
And now I understand that they even have a machine that drives it, the nails down.
Oh, wow. Different world.
Yeah, and it was just amazing the machinery that they were able to manufacture to do all this work. I can remember, you know, we'd have a tie gang go through, and there would be like 60, 70 men. Now there's maybe a dozen.
Okay.
That do everything, you know, because the machine does most of it. They have a machine that stops and takes the old tie out, and a new tie comes rolling over on a conveyor, and it's dropped on the ground. They slide it back in. We used to have to do all that manually, you know.
Okay.
It was amazing to see how things progressed from, you know, the early years to when before I retired. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for your interview. This is Mary Rasa for the Friends of the Aberdeen B&O train station. Thank you very much for coming.
Okay. Yeah.